Welcome to the Garden Angelist, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana, where I have a suburban garden measured in square feet.
And I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden on 7.5 acres out in the country.
We call ourselves Garden Angelists because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening, and we want others to love it too.
Yes, we do, and we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where. Let's move on to this week's episode. Hello, Carol.
Hello, Dee.
It's nice to see your smiling face this morning.
It's nice to see your face.
I hope our listeners can hear our smiling voices.
That's right, because we don't show them our actual faces.
At least we try not to, as much as possible.
No. Although I do on the YouTube, my 3-minute videos. Anyway, Dee.
I love your 3-minute videos. They're cute.
Thank you. I'll put a link in the show notes. So I want to tell our listeners what Dee did to me this week. And
I'm a helper.
I'm minding my beeswax. She sends me a text and she says, I'm ordering seeds and I see a bunch of sold outs. And I'm like, what? Mm-hmm. I have never ordered my seeds so fast in all my life, but I've got like 99% of the seeds I need, quote unquote, need ordered. Mm-hmm. So that is good. I want to thank you for sending me into a tizzy. I hope we don't send our listeners into a tizzy.
I tried. I wrote a blog post about it like the next day because there are some sold out seeds. If you want certain things, you better go order your seeds.
That's right. And my sister, who also plants a pretty big vegetable garden, youngest sister, she started texting me yesterday, how do you plan out a garden, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, so anyway, long story short, she got all her seeds ordered last night. So she's in good shape.
Very good. Very good. And you also bought some forced hyacinths at Aldi's, which you did a little video on. That's the one you should link to.
I did. I will list that one, but I was at Aldi and I was checking out and they had the hyacinths. I was going to buy one, then I bought two, a pink one and a blue one. And then I did as you suggested. When I got home, I got out my nicer vases and I plucked those others out of those store-bought vases, I guess. They're all store-bought, but the plain ones, and stuck them in my fancier vases. So I am all set with hyacinths. Woohoo!
Woohoo! That's awesome.
And one last thing, my microgreens are growing fabulous.
Yes.
I'll be harvesting some early this week, the superfoods mix, which is mostly brassicas. And I tasted one yesterday. Oh, it's going to be so good. So anyway, I've decided every Thursday I start another little container of them. So I've got 4 containers going now.
Ooh, good plan. Good plan. I'm not growing those. I don't want to. But I'm glad that you're doing it.
But anyway, Dee, let's talk about you for a minute.
Yeah. So I put some stuff up on, I know. I did a video on Instagram and posted it to my Instagram, whatever that's called, timeline. It's not a timeline, but whatever. And it was just a little live video. And I talked a little bit about the bees. And one of my people that follows me on there, one of my peeps, she said, hey, I'd like to hear some more about what you do with the bees. So I have a bee update.
What is your bee update? You told me last week and I got it all confused. So I called it that your bees go out on a pooping flight. And you said, it's not a pooping flight. It is a cleansing flight.
Cleansing flight. We don't use such base words in beekeeping as poop. And I'm not kidding. In beekeeping terminology, everything is like super Victorian. It's as if piano benches still had covers on them. To hide their legs.
That's right.
You're supposed to say legs, right? Or limbs.
Yeah.
So bees do not poop. They cleanse. They do cleansing flights in the winter. So if it's a nice day outside, and today will be one of those, maybe, it's going to get up to 50 something tomorrow. And that's when they really like to come out. And you'll see them flying back and forth and they're going to poop because
bees
do not They're going to cleanse.
There you go. I was going to say you're slipping. They're going to kick you out of the Beekeepers Association. If you
Yeah.
So anyway, they went out to cleanse.
They go out to cleanse, and you see them going back and forth because there aren't any flowers right now to speak of, right? There might be some hellebores, but nothing else is blooming yet. And so that's what they do in the winter because they will not relieve themselves in their hives.
Well, no, that'd be nasty. They're quite civilized in their society.
Sort of. I mean, they really aren't as civilized as people think they are, but we like to think they are. So anyway, that's about all they do in winter. They keep everybody warm, they eat honey, and they wait. And then you feed them in about March in Oklahoma, and you start feeding them sugar water to tell the queen that she can start to lay eggs again.
Very nice. So that's the bee update.
So that's the bee update.
So that is interesting. I can't wait to hear more about that. But you also have ordered all your seeds. Is that correct?
I would say that, yes, I've ordered all my seeds. I've still got to buy. I decided, and I say this, and we're going to link to my update on Red Dirt Ramblings, but I buy most of my tomatoes, peppers. Yeah. And if I grow eggplant this year, I buy most of those from local companies as transplants. I have started them many, many times in the past, but I like a nice variety, and I would rather go buy from somebody locally. And I love the Tomato Man's Daughter in Tulsa. So,
very good. We'll talk more about seeds next week. We got some exciting stuff to talk about. But for this week, here's the quote. Are you ready?
I am ready.
But it's gardening that's needed here, and that isn't learned in a day. Gardening, that's what this place needs.
By?
And that's the line in A Murder is Announced by Agatha Christie.
And our entire episode this week is about Agatha Christie and gardening, which actually was kind of a suggestion of my friend Karen Collier, because she's a huge Agatha Christie fan. And I thought, you know what? There's a lot of gardening in Agatha Christie.
There is. And that quote, but it's gardening that's needed here. I used to write that on my whiteboard in my office when I worked, because I worked amongst people that weren't gardeners. And it's like, y'all need to garden. Anyway.
It relieves stress. And I like how it isn't learned in a day. And that isn't learned in a day. And if that's one thing this podcast teaches, gardening takes a lifetime to learn.
Exactly. And so for the flowers, we were going to talk about some of the flowers in gardening that's mentioned in Agatha Christie's Mysteries. And there's two ways they're mentioned. They're mentioned as clues sometimes.
Sometimes.
And sometimes they're mentioned because they're poisons.
Right. I was going to say there's a lot of talk of poisons. I just finished reading The Affair Styles.
Yes.
There's a lot of discussion of poisons and natural poisons, and then chemical derivations of various plants in that book. And that didn't give it, that's not a spoiler. And we are not going to do any spoilers because we really want you, if you aren't an Agatha Christie fan, to read her books because she's really good. And so one flower that is not a poison that's mentioned is roses, one group of plants.
Right. And that was in the mystery Sad Cypress with Hercule Poirot as the sleuth.
It's one of my
Zephyrine Drohan.
No.
Am I saying that right?
Zephyrine Druin.
Zephyrine Druin rose became a big clue. That's all we're going to say.
That's all we're going to say about that. Also, in a lot of Mrs. Marple mysteries, she is tending her garden, and she's often clipping roses, which I thought was funny too.
It is. And the first mystery I read when I decided I was going to read all the Miss Marple series was one called Nemesis. And someone, when I was working, said, "Hey, Carol, did you know that takes place while she's on a garden tour?" And I'm like, I did not know that. So that was a nice tie into gardening. So Agatha Christie had to be into gardening.
She was into gardening. She was quite the gardener, actually. She was also into archaeology, as was her husband.
Yes, her second husband.
But
the other thing was she worked as a pharmacy assistant in World War I.
Yes.
And that's where she learned so much about poisons.
Ah, and that makes sense because in the book I just read, The Mysterious Affair at Styles, there is a pharmacy assistant in there. That's interesting.
Yes. So she learned a lot about poisons working as a pharmacy assistant. And so it's, people just sort of up and dive, mysterious circumstances. There's no bullet. And here's the thing about Agatha Christie, which everybody should love, is there's no blood, guts, and gore. There's not it's the body's found. And that's all you need to know.
Yeah, people don't know. There's not any cutting anybody's throat on page 2. It just doesn't happen. Sometimes it starts out that way and that person gets killed, but it's almost always a bump on the head or something else. I mean, it's never bloody, which is part of the point of these cozy mysteries and where that term came from. And the idea that it's a closed system. So you have a certain number of suspects and you have to choose from those suspects, and you are supposedly given all the clues before the actual denouement. But I'm telling you, it's hard to figure out who the bad guy or girl is.
There was another Agatha Christie novel called At Bertram's Hotel, which also has Miss Jane Marple.
Yes.
And she said, the out-of-date becomes picturesque. Look how people wanted old-fashioned roses now and scorned hybrid teas. I thought that was fascinating.
That is fascinating, and I didn't know that was in there. I've read At Bertram's Hotel, and I've also read Nemesis. That's true of now. I mean, people, although rosarians who, display and show their roses, grow hybrid teas and want hybrid teas, and I even have a few. For the most part, I want things that look old-fashioned and work in gardens. So there you go. We are going to link to an article in Garden Collage, which is called Agatha Christie Loved Her Poisonous Plants. And I thought that was really a good article explaining her love of poison.
Yes, and of course it talks about some of the most poisonous plants are monkshood, which I never grow. When people say, why not? It's like, it's really poisonous.
I mean, it's really poisonous. I think it would be hard to grow here anyway. But it does have the most beautiful blue flowers. I mean, monk's head blue is gorgeous stuff, but I don't want to grow it. I mean, a lot of plants in our gardens are poisonous. Oleander, which is used a lot in pots here, but you would have to actually ingest it.
Right. And monkshood is beyond that.
Yeah, I've heard that it can be poisonous enough if you touch it enough, you can make yourself sick. But I don't know if that's true. So let's move on to our next quote, shall we?
Okay.
I saw the chance to escape into the garden. I am rather fond of gardening. Hercule Poirot's neighbor in Agatha Christie's The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. In this scene, Hercule actually throws a marrow over the garden wall in frustration into his neighbor's garden, and he almost hits his neighbor.
Yes, and I will confess to you that I have not read all the Hercule Poirot mysteries, but I watched every single one on Netflix right after I retired. That winter after I retired, I watched every single one from beginning to end. And I remember this scene. And Poirot...
I did too. I've seen that one.
Poirot is dressed the way he always dressed. He's got on a shirt and a little tie and a vest and the coat. And
he's dapper.
Very dapper. And his mustache is perfection. And he's out there practically weeding with tweezers around these marrows, which is zucchini squash.
Oh, I didn't know marrow was zucchini squash, summer squash.
Yeah, it's summer squash.
Oh, I didn't know that, I didn't remember it.
I hope that's right.
You're probably right, because you looked it up.
Well,
so,
I'm thinking, wait a minute.
I think it's funny that
I'm going to look it up again.
Okay, well, you keep looking it up. So supposedly Hercule Poirot grew marrow during his retirement, which he never really retires, but he tries to.
Right.
And so he says that he's dressed impeccably like he always is in retirement. Do you dress like you did at work in your retirement?
No. No. No, not at all.
I love that he's dapper. My father-in-law was always dapper. He dressed and always wore his nice hat and his suit. Even after he retired, he was very dapper.
That's good. I did look it up. Marrow is summer squash. Ooh.
That is so cool. So it says that he's trying to make them grow bigger. And
Yeah.
oh, he wants the fruits to grow bigger, not the plants. So he throws an actual zucchini over at that person. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
See, she had a great sense of humor.
Yeah, and I have a blog post with this in it, and I will post to it. I'll link to it. But
so we should just say up front, we are not trying to grow the biggest zucchinis.
No.
We've talked about that before, and my sweet neighbor who gives me his baseball bat size zucchini, and how that's not really what you're trying to do. You're trying to grow, 6 inches or less to make a really good zucchini.
And so I thought it would be helpful, since we're talking about summer squash. And this goes back to my sister. It's like you are inundated with varieties of plants to grow. And so if you're a new gardener, what is a good way, not the only way, but a good way to figure out what variety should I grow? I suggest to any gardener on any vegetable, go to the All America selections, because those are tested, and it's not like a bunch of vendor speak that says, this is the greatest thing ever. These are people have grown these, and they have gone through trials.
All over the United States.
And exactly. And so I went out to All America selections and said, okay, if I didn't know anything about zucchini squash, what would I grow?
Okay. And of course, they brought up Black Beauty, because that one's been around forever.
1957. Okay. I'm growing that one this year. How about you?
I am not. I like Black Beauty. It works fine, but it's not my favorite, so I'm not.
And then from 1965, they had Chefini, Chefini. Never heard of it.
Never grew that one. Don't know what it is.
And then from 1973, they had Aristocrat. Didn't know about that one.
Never grew that one either. I've grown Cube of Butter, which you're getting ready to talk about.
Yeah, well, let me finish off the All America selections. They have Bossa Nova from 2015, and I have grown that one.
Was it good?
It was good, but let's talk about how different does one zucchini taste compared to another?
Not that different. And I was actually looking through my seed orders to see if I don't think I actually ordered any of my summer squash yet, which really bums me out because I thought I had. Anyway, I was ordering too fast. Okay, zucchini. The only zucchini I've noticed that tastes significantly different is the gray varieties of zucchini, which are highly prized in Mexican cuisine. Okay? And I'm just going to give a shout out for gray zucchinis. And there's several different varieties. One called gray. And those have a little bit of a meatier taste, for one thing. And they are also more resistant, in my personal reflection, to squash bugs than some of the other zucchinis. So in my part of the United States, they are a really good choice. Now, I would still say cover your plants.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So I've ordered Black Beauty. And as you mentioned, I ordered for green. And then I ordered Cube of Butter, which is a yellow squash, because it just sounded good, from Botanical Interest.
Right. I've grown it. It's good.
And then I ordered from Botanical Interest something just called round zucchini squash, because I like to grow a round zucchini squash. And cue ball is a one, and this one's not called cue ball, but it looks exactly like it, and there's several out there. So I ordered that one. But now I got to order a gray one.
Last year I grew an Israeli zucchini that was fine. I mean, they're all pretty good. If you can keep the squash bugs off of them in Oklahoma, you can grow all the zucchini you want. But I also love yellow squash, which is not zucchini. It's slightly different. And I tend to buy the heirloom crookneck. Also, again, a little more resistant to squash bugs. So it just gives me a little bit of a chance.
That's true. And then, I don't know. I'll probably see some others. I'll tell you what, ZD. I'm thinking zucchini on the brain.
I know.
When I get mine, it wouldn't take much to bust open the packet and say, there's way more than I'm going to sow, so I could share some with you. I could share some with my sisters. I mean, there's way more than I'm going to grow.
Oh, yeah. You always have way more zucchini. And I think, it might be Renee's Seeds who does the little packet that has 3 different zucchini or 3 different summer squash in it. And I've done that before because I only have a small space in which I'm going to devote to summer squash. Because you don't need very many.
No.
And so I've often grown that one, and she color codes the seeds so that you know which seed's which. And she has one for that with eggplant too.
That's nice.
Which is actually a picture on my blog.
I did not order eggplant seeds.
I did not this year either. I didn't, like we talked about at the end of summer, I didn't eat any of my eggplant last year. I love eggplant, and I don't know why I didn't eat it, but I didn't eat it. So I'm not going to grow it this year. I'm going to grow tomatoes, peppers, onions. Yeah, tomatoes, peppers, onions, a little squash.
Well, we talk a big game like we're not gonna, but here's what's going to happen, Dee. You're going to go to the Tomato Man's Daughter or someplace else. They're going to have some beautiful eggplant plants. And you're going to say,
and I'm going to buy them.
what's wrong with buying a couple of those? And that's like, I'm not going to buy eggplant seeds, but they're going to have some eggplant at the greenhouse, and I'm going to buy some.
Okay, well, that'd be fun too. Anything else you want to say about summer squash?
Just grow it, but don't let it get too big, the squash.
Okay. Do you want to do our quote?
Gardening is as good as a smokescreen, and the habit of observing birds through powerful glasses can always be turned to account. That's Agatha Christie again in The Murder at the Vicarage.
Which I read about 3 months ago again. So I know exactly what part she's talking about. She's saying that, nobody notices an old lady in her garden.
That's right. And so I do tell people, it's like, old lady in the garden out front, she notices more than you think she does.
Oh, yeah, she does. So we aren't going to say anything more about that because we don't want to give anything away, but we hope we have enticed you to read some of her books and find the gardening.
Exactly. And so on the bookshelf, you would think we'd have a book by Agatha Christie, but we do not. We decided,
no, we have another book.
in keeping with the theme of poisonous plants, our friend Amy Stewart several years ago wrote a book called Wicked Plants, The Weed That Killed Lincoln's Mother and Other Botanical Atrocities.
One of the best books Amy ever wrote. And Amy's written some great books, and I'm a big fan.
Yes.
I think this is my favorite book, though. It's so deliciously creepy. How can you not like it, right? I mean, it's all factual. It's all these stories about different people who've been killed by plants, which is creepy.
It is creepy. And so, and the way they put it together, the publisher, which is Algonquin Books, the pages, they have a richness to them. There's sort of a tan modeled thing, and it's got botanical illustrations. And it really is kind of, I don't know if it's creepy. Maybe this should have been a book in the fall when, around Halloween when we like to read creepy things. But
well, we can do Wicked Bugs then, which is her
There-
other book, another one of her books.
yes. But anyway,
I just think it sounds. I think it's one of the best books if you want to understand poisons and alkaloids and all kinds of different things. It's a good one, and so we thought we would feature it this time.
yes, and so that is a good one. We have a link to it in the show notes. That's Wicked Plants by Amy Stewart. We also, for the dirt, we had another book that, did you finish reading it yet, Dee?
No, I haven't finished reading it yet, and I'm going to read it today because I've decided that's what I want to do today. Stay away from the news, read a book.
So the book is called The Mystery of Mrs. Christie by Marie Benedict. And I did read it, Dee. It took me, like a day, 2 days. And it's all about it's a historical fiction. So it's Marie Benedict has written a story about the time period when Agatha Christie disappeared in 1928 for 11 days. And it's true. She disappeared for 11 days.
Yeah, I knew she did. Mhm,
And they had
I
like
know.
a nationwide search for her.
Because she was famous. She was already
Yeah.
famous. And so people freaked out because she disappeared.
Yes. And so it gets even more mysterious when you find out that Agatha Christie did not mention this at all in her autobiography.
Nope.
So Marie Benedict, who's written several other books about famous women, not so famous women, but just kind of pulled these little facts out of history and woven stories around them. She did a marvelous job. And I attended I guess it would be a book launch party or something
Right.
that the Strand Bookstore in New York City had online. And And so
For this book?
me and 300 other people got to be there while Marie was interviewed by another author. And it was really good. And so that's kind of the other dirt we have.
So I also wanted to say that Marie Benedict also wrote The Only Woman in the Room, which was about Hedy Lamarr. And I did read that book. And I thought it was fabulous. And I suggested it to everyone I knew. So I'm very excited to read this too. Although I'm just going to say to you right now, Mrs. Christie should not have had to explain why she was gone for 11 days. I know people thought she'd been kidnapped and all this other stuff, but it just goes to show, I mean, if I decided to disappear for 11 days, I guess people would wonder, but do you have to explain yourself when you come back?
No, you don't. And so Marie has come up with this is like one of millions of theories, but Marie has come up with a really good story to kind of make it all make sense. But of course, we have to remember it's historical fiction. So who knows?
Yeah, because we don't know. And The Only Woman in the Room I don't think it's a novel. Is it a novel? I don't think so. Although, it's based on facts. And it's based on the idea that Hedy Lamarr created this amazing thing and gave it to the United States. And I don't want to give anything away. But it's about World War II.
Yeah, and so I would say it's more historical than fiction. Mm-hmm. The Mystery of Mrs. Christie is actual historical fiction.
Because nobody really knows what happened.
No. But I just want to give a shout out that we are all sick to death of online Zooms and things like that. Mm-hmm. But kind of the pivot is, hey, I was able to attend this talk that this woman gave for the Strand Bookstore online with 300 other people, which is amazing. And so I also signed up this past week to go to the Wisconsin Garden Expo, which will be taking place on a screen in front of me in February. And they have all these different garden talks, and it's free. They'd like a donation. But so here are a bunch of speakers and stuff that I would never be able to go see. I would never go up to Wisconsin for the Wisconsin Garden Expo. Not that I don't like Wisconsin. But it's all on there virtual. So I'm kind of excited about that.
Yes, and Amy Stewart's having a Zoom thing tomorrow night that you could sign up for.
I did. I'm doing that.
Yeah, I'm doing it too. So it is an opportunity to go do things that you might not normally have a chance to do, even though I'm so sick of Zoom I could scream. But if you're not able to do those things on Zoom, we have more dirt. And it's about 2 podcasts about Agatha Christie, which I learned about from my friend Karen. And I really like the one called She Done It. And it's spelled SHEDUNNIT. It's hosted by Carolyn Crampton, and she breaks down Agatha Christie novels based upon, it's not individual novels, but it's facts about Dame Agatha herself and why she might have written certain novels. And one of the episodes I just listened to it was done between Christmas and Thanksgiving, and she was discussing the whole genre of the cozy mystery and why it is comforting. Because you wouldn't think murder would be comforting, right? But it is.
Right.
Because it sets the world aright and a lot of other things. But I really, really thought about why they wrote it. That particular episode was my favorite one because they talk about why those were written, and the classic golden years of them were between the First World War and Second World War. And you think about what happened in the world during that time and how it's not so different from it being very difficult now. The other podcast that I've been listening to while I walk is all about Agatha, which is hosted by Kemper Donovan and Catherine Brobeck. You want to make sure that you've already read the book before you listen. They're doing the books chronologically.
Okay.
Which is what made me go back and read The Mysterious Affair at Styles. I had never read it. And then I listened to their podcast because there are occasionally, they give stuff away occasionally. So we don't want you to listen to these before you listen to us, the Garden Angelists. But
exactly.
You can take them along later.
Exactly. So if you like mysteries, She Done It and All About Agatha, we will include links in our show notes so you can check those out and read some good mysteries this winter. Because we don't always just read gardening books. We read other books and look for gardening references in them.
Because of course we do.
Anyway, that's it for this week. We want to thank everybody. Oh, wait a minute. It's not it. We got to do our garden commission.
So what are you going to do this week?
So I'm going to start another tray of microgreens. I'm going to sort through last season's seed stash, and then we're going to pin down when we're going to do that Zoom with terrariums. That's it.
Okay,
That's
sounds
enough.
good. As soon as my sweet pea seeds get here, I'm going to start them inside in the greenhouse, and I'm going to try to do them in what's called a trainer. Instead of just a pot, I'm going to try to do a trainer so I can get that deep root system. So I've got to order those trainers and get them here too.
Very nice. I'd like to hear more about that. Anyway, now I think we can wrap up by thanking everyone for listening to the Garden Angelos. If you like our podcast, please tell your friends about us. Also, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything.
And if you listen on Apple Podcasts, we'd love a 5-star review. That helps us get noticed by others.
Yes, and be sure and check out our show notes for links for more information about today's topics, plus links to our own websites. And if you want to help support us, use the affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we earn a small commission, and it costs you nothing.
It was lovely to chat with all of you of the Garden Gate today. Bye until next week.
Bye.